Welcome to the Love Dog Podcast. I'm your co-host, Raina Butcher, here with our lovely host, Dr. Sarah Hensley. Hello,
Hi.
Dr. Hensley.
Hello.
Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I am a specialized social psychologist. I've been studying the science of attachment and attraction inside romantic relationships for over 15 years. I'm also a subject matter expert on dark and malevolent personalities inside of relationships, which is something I talk about a lot. And I have a coaching practice where I help people essentially restore their romantic relationships, or if they're single, achieve attachment security. So I work from the lens of attachment theory, which is very solid psychological science.
Yeah. Which actually brings us to the subject of this episode 8, which is we are once and for all going to settle the debacle or the confusion, rather, between the FA, the Fearful Avoidant, and the DA, the Dismissive Avoidant.
Yep.
Because it is a little tricky. Like, I remember
tricky.
even when you were training me to coach, that was probably those two styles were the two that I was like, like that I really had to dig deep into to really know what the big differences are. Mainly because the FA, right? The title itself is a little confusing because it says fearful, it's Fearful Avoidant, but they have an extreme anxious side.
Yeah, they can go into anxiety.
Yes. So because people love the DA the most and they're so fascinated with the DA, we're actually going to start with the FA and then we'll end with the DA.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. Tell us all about the FA.
Okay, so fearful avoidants have the entire attachment spectrum. So you have to think about attachment as a spectrum. Some people try to think about it as like these concrete finite boxes, and they're really not. It's just this spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum, you have attachment anxiety. And anxiety makes you want to seek connection, makes you want to activate, get closer to your partner, be with your partner, right? Seek them out. And then we have avoidance on the other end. It's the polar opposite end is avoidance. And avoidance makes you want to deactivate or pull away from your partner to, be alone, to get away from, your significant other.
Right.
And so the fearful avoidant has the entire spectrum, which means that they can move into anxiety and really seek out connection and want to be with their partner and want to have intimacy. And then at times, usually for different reasons that they're triggered, they can shut down and pull away really hard. So fearful avoidance develops when there's childhood trauma. And people have this misconception about trauma. They're like, well, I didn't have any trauma. But then when I talk to them, like I had a client a couple of days ago, and he was like, I didn't have any childhood trauma. I had no, and then as it rolled out, it was, well, my parents did fight all the time. They did yell, they did scream, they did cuss. And I'm like, that's trauma.
Yeah.
If you're a little child and your parents are screaming and cussing at each other, that makes you afraid.
Right.
It may not give you PTSD.
Right.
You may not have terrible trauma symptoms. But inherently, it taught you, I can't trust my caregivers and I can't trust love.
And I don't feel safe.
I don't feel safe.
Right. And as a child, again, I think that you equate love with safety, like feeling safe. Like, I feel safe here. I'm loved. The end. Like, that's the extent of how a child thinks.
Right. So whenever there's childhood trauma, and it doesn't even have to be trauma that the parents committed. Sometimes I see people who have been SA'd as children, and it wasn't even a parent. It was like an uncle or a
SA'd. What do you mean?
Okay, that's the the term that you're supposed to use on social media for a certain kind of abuse.
Okay,
the intimate kind of abuse.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
They don't let you say it anymore usually.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it because it's the word?
I think.
The S word?
I don't know. But I know, like, you can't say it on TikTok.
Yeah, they'll ban you.
They'll ban you.
Yeah, Instagram gets a little upset about it too. So,
if you've had,
it rhymes with Rex.
Yeah. If you've had that happen to you in childhood and it happened, like, say, from a neighbor.
Right.
It still gets imprinted as I can't trust my parents.
Sure.
Because your parents are supposed to be the people that protect you. Right? And even though logically and rationally it wasn't my parents' fault if they didn't know, if they had no evidence or reason to believe this was going on, the child still is like, I got put in this situation and why didn't you protect me on a subconscious level?
Yeah.
So there could be that kind of abuse. There could be physical abuse. There could be emotional abuse. It could be a parent that had a substance abuse problem, a parent that had a mental illness. In my case, my dad had bipolar disorder and he had some significant attachment problems. And I didn't trust my dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that, you know, it's just I didn't trust that he was an emotionally stable person. I didn't trust that he could show up for me in the way that I really needed him to show up for me because he was too consumed with his own problems and pathologies.
Yeah.
And, you know, fearful avoidants oftentimes have these moments in childhood where they look at their parent and they're like, you can't show up for me.
Yeah.
You've got too many issues of your own. And that leaves me essentially without the type of parent that I'm supposed to have, which is a parent that loves me correctly and safely and consistently.
Well, and I know too, for me, it was, I felt extremely emotionally responsible for.
Yeah, you were parentified.
Yeah, for my emotionally unstable parent. I don't want to throw my mother under the bus. I want to be careful what I say about her. You know, because like you said, you know, she's not here to defend herself.
Sure.
She's, you know, I lost her 6 years ago. But there was a lot of emotional instability there. And so I felt very emotionally responsible for her from a very young age, as in because she was extremely reactive. So
I wonder why you're a people pleaser.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's because I'm like, how can I make everyone okay? And then I wonder, like, why is my son like this? Oh, yes, because I objectify that onto him. But you know, I felt extremely emotionally responsible for her, which made me, which is a trait of the FA. It made me very hypervigilant.
Yeah.
Like any expression that somebody makes, you know, even if, I mean, this happens a lot within my marriage with Josh. Like Josh can just be a little off, just a tiny bit off. And I'm like, what's wrong? What's, I got to fix this.
Yeah.
And
so my husband.
Yeah.
My husband, he's like, you have a funny look on your face. Are you okay? Something wrong? Are you all right?
Yeah.
I love you. What can I do for you? You know? And
same. I'm the same way.
You're the exact same way.
Yeah. And Josh is like, I
married
Josh,
the male version of you.
Yes, you did. And Josh gets a little, and it's funny because I feel like you and Josh are more alike.
Yeah, I think we are.
I mean, sometimes it gets so bad that Josh is like, if you ask me one more time, what is wrong with me? Like something actually is going to be wrong. Like nothing's wrong. Just take my word for it. Nothing is wrong.
Right. But when you have childhood trauma and you have an emotionally unstable parent, your brain's attention system develops toward hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And like really checking out, like, is mom okay right now? Can I approach mom right now? Do I need to go to my room right now? Like, is mom mad about something? What happened? And so you become somebody who's deeply, without even knowing, on a subconscious level, studies people. And that's what fearful avoidants do. You're a former fearful avoidant. I'm a former fearful avoidant. My husband's a former fearful avoidant. Like, I'm surrounded by I live in the FA space, okay?
It's because we're the most awesome.
I know. Yeah, drama.
It makes us awesome.
Of course I had childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So the fearful avoidants, they're hypervigilant. So they put their partners under a microscope. So they are constantly like, this is everything my partner's doing. This, and this is all the stuff I don't like. And fearful avoidants have a negative bias towards their partner, which they don't like to hear that. But I'm like, you focus a lot on what they do wrong and not at all on what they do right. Because from a survival standpoint, focusing on threats helps keep you alive.
Right.
Right. And that's kind of what happens with that trauma, that childhood trauma, right? You launch into a sort of survival mode.
Yeah.
So fearful avoidance, because they couldn't trust their caregivers, they struggle with a real bad betrayal wound, which is like, if I can't even trust my own parents to show up for me, who could I possibly ever trust? And again, that is subconscious. That is not going on in the conscious mind.
Right.
So then when we get inside relationships, they're really, really focused on avoiding pain and avoiding betrayal inside of their relationships. So they really, again, let me put my partner under a microscope. Let me figure out all the ways they're hurting me, and then let them know really strongly that they're hurting me.
In hopes that they don't.
Right.
Yeah.
In even ways that, I mean, and oversensitive is a good term. Fearful avoidants are very oversensitive people.
Yeah.
Again, because they had trauma.
Yep.
Right? So they're very, like, they have the most wounds, So it's not hard to find one to step on.
Right.
Right?
It makes them extremely complex, too.
Very oh gosh, fearful avoidants are the most complex people. She's like, I love my husband so much because he's so beautifully complex, and so am I.
Yep.
But we're the exact same person. And I don't remember who I heard this from, something on TikTok. But it was somebody saying that when you achieve attachment security, and I don't have a lot of science on this, so I'm saying this with a grain of salt. When you achieve attachment security, you seek out someone who is more like you than unlike you.
Yeah.
Instead of seeking out somebody with the opposite types of insecurities as you, you seek out someone who has the same insecurities as you that you guys have both worked on to try to heal.
Yeah,
so that you can see it when it's coming up and you can stop it. But then it gives you this ability to have tons of empathy and grace and understanding for the other person because you're like, well, I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. I was reading something like that, I think on Instagram yesterday, that same thing. Quentin somebody, he's an attachment expert. Well, I mean, I can't think of his name, but his was a dialogue, and it was essentially saying the same thing. When you reach attachment security, you attract that person that is more like you for those same reasons, so that you can exhibit more empathy and understanding towards them when conflict or something does happen.
Yes. So. And my husband and I say all the time, oh my gosh, we're the same person.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we're the exact same people.
Yeah. Josh is very different than me.
I think you guys have a lot of similarities.
We are very similar in a lot of ways, but and it's not just, we're not different just because I feel like, he was a born secure and I wasn't, but we're different in the aspect of Josh tends to be a little bit more of an introvert, and I can be I'm pretty extroverted.
Yeah.
We're similar in this case because he's like super artsy.
Yeah,
I'm pretty artsy.
Super artsy.
Yeah,
you guys are both creative.
Yeah.
You're both artsy.
Yeah.
You both enjoy a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
You love the outdoors.
Music.
Your values are the same. You guys are
we are
more similar than you think.
for each other.
Yeah. So the fearful avoidant, though, just to kind of swing back, is they really want love, but they are terrified of betrayal. Terrified. They're hypervigilant that it's going to happen. They're oversensitive to it happening. And then when it does happen, they get very reactive, and they either swing very anxious, and they can do they can go into a fight response, which is like being pretty emotionally reactive.
Yeah.
Or they can slam the door in your face and go avoidant and withdraw and ice you out.
I've done both.
Oh, yeah.
I think later on, like in my younger days, it was easier for me to just get reactive. But then over time, right, with the fearful avoidant, I think what happens is that reactivity no longer serves them. And so when betrayal happens, they're just like, well, told you.
Yeah, slam the
And
door
then
in
they're
your
like,
face.
boom,
Yeah.
and they put up that wall,
Yeah.
and that wall is hard to tear down.
Yeah, but it's not a wall of boundaries. It's
No.
a wall of I'm going to stay with you, but I don't want you to be hurt. I don't
It's
want
a
you to hurt
wall of
me
resentment
anymore.
and cynicism.
Yes, thank you. Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfectly. It's fearful avoidants hold on to their pain.
Yeah.
They use it as a shield.
Yeah.
Because remember, they're terrified of betrayal. So if they experience betrayal, they're like, and it could be a small betrayal. It could be, and for the fearful avoidant, they're so sensitive to small betrayals.
Yeah.
Like you said you would take out the trash and you didn't. That's a small betrayal.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't do what you said you were going to do. And if I magnified that, right, then you're just somebody in general who doesn't do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
Right? Or I've asked you not to do something and you did it. Or you've hurt me in the same way more than once. And, each time that happens, it's just like a notch on the bedpost, right? Of resentment.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a client or a couple.
And anger.
And this is just an example, and it's a great example of even the tiniest thing, even when it's a nice gesture, if it's done in a way that doesn't line up with what the fearful avoidant expected, it's still a betrayal. And this was
one of the most dysfunctional characteristics.
Yeah. And so this specific couple, she liked to receive gifts. And but it was important to her that she got the gifts that she wanted. So to help her dismissive avoidant partner, because what do DAs love? They love lists.
Yeah, they want to be told what to do.
Right. She would write out a list of the things that she wanted for Christmas. And this was actually a fight that they brought to me around Christmas time. He didn't get what was on the list.
Stick to the list.
Stick to the list. And this was a huge betrayal for her.
Yeah.
Because he didn't stick to the list. She made it simple for him. She thought she was doing him a favor, and he still strayed from the list.
Facepalm.
Stick to the list.
That's what Ross said.
That's
Stick
right.
to the list.
Stick to the list. No scooter, dude.
Yeah, no scooter. Yeah, so fearful avoidants, because they have such a desire to trust you, what is trust? Trust comes from intimacy. Trust comes from knowing you so well. And so they see like my deepest need to feel like I can trust you is to be seen, heard, and understood by you.
Right.
Right? So if you see me, you know me, you understand me, you should be able to swoop in there and meet my needs without me having to ask.
Yep.
If I have to ask you to do something for me to meet a need in the fearful avoidance mind, that's like it doesn't even count because you should know me well enough, to meet the need without me having to ask. And I'm not going to lie, my husband is so good at that in my marriage. And so there's a part of me that's like, did I really heal that about myself, or is he just so good at meeting my needs that I'm not tested in that way anymore?
Or maybe you just healed yourself enough that you attracted someone who you knew could meet all your needs.
Yeah. But I think that's the that's the underlying FA in both of us.
Yeah.
Is like we really observe and we take a lot of data. What does my husband need? What's going on with him? How is he feeling? What's his day like?
Yeah.
What can I do to be a good wife today? And he's equally as concerned.
But that's the FA that earns security.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the FA in the honeymoon phase shows up that way, but then they develop so much betrayal and resentment and hurt from any conflicts that arise that they can't get over because they hold on to their pain, that they stop wanting to meet their partner's needs because they feel resentment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so biggest need, if you have an FA partner, the best thing you can do for them is hear them. If they have a complaint, if they are upset, do anything you can do to avoid your own defensiveness and allow them to express their pain.
Yeah.
And then tell them, I hear your pain, I see your pain, and I love you, and I don't want you to feel like you're in pain. So how can I meet a need for you, or what can I do differently for you that would feel better to you?
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying that you should be, if they're using you as a punching bag, we just talked about that. Of course, that's not okay. But if they're just saying, hey, this is what I need in the relationship, or this thing hurt me, if you get defensive around that, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
And I
with
think
the
that's,
FA.
going back to the list example, I think, that's essentially what had happened. But what I was trying to explain to him is it was almost like a double betrayal, right? It was because she was doing something that FAs really aren't great at doing, which was saying, hey, this is what I want.
Because they just want you to read their minds.
Right. This is what I want. This is the list. I'm making this easy for you. And then he still didn't follow through. And then when she was like, why can't you just follow through, like, with what the list said?
These DAs just, they haven't, and so we'll get into this with the DA.
Yeah.
They have spirit of rebellion.
Yeah.
They do not want to be controlled.
And he definitely did.
And if you ask for something, they will almost not do it more.
Yeah.
Like the Michael Scott situation. Like, I'm going to not do that even harder. That is the DA.
Yeah.
And the FA-DA combo is by far the most painful. Anxious, I would rather have an anxious preoccupied with a dismissive avoidant than I would have a fearful with a dismissive. Because the fearful avoidant's biggest need is to be seen, heard, and understood. And the dismissive avoidant is missing all the neural connections around noticing people. They're so self-directed because they were pushed into hyper-independence. They were dismissed. The FA wants to be very vulnerable. They see vulnerability, at least in the beginning of the relationship. They see it as a source of developing trust and safety, which it is. But the only downside is then when any little thing happens, the DA is like, oh, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
Or the FA goes, oh, that was a mistake. I should never have been vulnerable and open with you because you just hurt me.
Yeah.
So then the wall goes up.
Yeah. And FAs won't self-abandon for too long. They'll be like, oh, like they'll rebel, right? And that's why they have that reactivity too.
Like mean.
Whereas the anxious preoccupied
keeps trying.
Yeah. They'll appease. And that's dysfunctional.
We know somebody that's an anxious preoccupied and this person just is a doormat.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I know I've stated this to you recently. You know, I see it in my son. Ugh. And it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And I want to catch it now. You know, I want to catch it now and bring it to light, because in his sweet, precious little 17-year-old young man brain, he's just like, yeah, but I'm just loving my girlfriend.
You're self-abandoning in the process.
Well, and again, like, he's just apologizing for things he doesn't even know he's sorry for. And
the FA doesn't do that.
no, because he just wants everyone to be emotionally okay.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just how he's been his whole life. Like, is everyone emotionally okay? And, you know, Paul and I are definitely to blame for that.
I understand. I mean, I totally get it. And, you know, in my experience as an FA, I mean, my FA traits, so let me talk about some of the FA traits. Hypervigilance, I already talked about that. They can be anxious or they can be avoidant. Man, they beat a dead horse like nobody's business. Why? And I this is something I still struggle with. I'm not going to lie. This is just one of those elements of my attachment that, like, I have to really try hard to check, and my husband has to keep me in check, because I want to over-explain. I want to talk about it from 50 different angles, 50 different times. And what it is this psychological need to be like, you have to understand me.
Right.
Because if you understand me, then you'll never hurt me.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, I need to let go of that. Like, he heard it the first time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it becomes beratement.
Yes.
When you continue to talk and talk and talk and talk about the same thing over and over again. And so they do that. They use the moving goalpost, which is like, one day they're mad at you because you didn't clean out the garage, and the next day they're mad at you because you didn't give them a hug, the next day, and they always have a problem.
Yep.
What they're doing, and they don't even realize it, is, one, they're so used to staying miserable. I mean, fearful avoidants sort of live in their pain, so they have to find a reason to be in pain. Again, they have that negative bias.
Yeah.
But two, it becomes a self-conscious or subconscious, I should say, test of trust.
Yeah.
Like, if I move the goalpost over here and you kick it through, I momentarily feel like you're not going to betray me, that you're going to show up for me,
right,
that you're going to meet my needs. But that doesn't last very long before my attachment
test.
wound kicks in and feels like I'm going to be betrayed. So let me shift to the goalpost over here and see how far you'll go to kick it through. And then, but what ends up happening is they're creating a relationship where they are never satisfied with their partner.
Yeah.
And their partner gets worn out.
Defeated.
Like, no matter what I do, it's never enough. And that DA is so sensitive to feeling like that anyway. When you put an FA with a DA who is so sensitive to criticism, is so sensitive to feeling like they're not, being told you're not getting it right.
Yeah.
It's a disaster.
Yeah, it is.
It's a disaster.
Like the perfect storm.
It is. The wounds of the fearful avoidant and the wounds of the dismissive avoidant trigger each other insanely. And they get into the worst toxic conflict cycle imaginable, which is, the FA feels like they've been somehow not seen, heard, understood, needs met, betrayed, or hurt in some way. They bring that with all their emotional reactivity to the dismissive avoidant. Even if they try to be not critical, FAs are critical.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
The DA has such a wound around criticism that they immediately feel defensive.
Yeah.
And then what do when they're triggered? They shut down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they pull away from you. And then the FA's like, here, I am trying to seek a resolution and fix this. And you just withdraw. You must not care about me or love me. And that's a betrayal.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then the fearful avoidance, like, no, they struggle with wounds of defectiveness. The dismissive avoidant, I should say, struggles with wounds of defectiveness. And so when the FA is criticizing the dismissive avoidant, that's immediately poking at their defectiveness when saying,
like, well,
you're not
I'll never be able to meet their needs.
Yeah. And then the DA goes into I can't do this. I'm not built for this. They want something I can't give them.
I've seen it, again, when I was coaching, on the other side of the spectrum where this specific FA partner, I think she was anxious on the inside for sure. But, they'd been married for a long time. And so she became more avoidant again over the years, even though her anxiety on the inside was killing her.
Yeah.
But again, it stemmed from just the fear of rejection, because he had shut down so many times on her that she wouldn't come to him anymore, because she knew that it meant rejection, which is the worst. Don't tell an
Such a
FA no.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a betrayal.
Don't tell us no. And so then it was just like they lived on these two separate islands where nothing ever really got resolved, and both were being avoidant.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's like you have the cycle. The FA's trying to work it out. The DA withdraws. The FA's trying to work it out. The DA withdraws. And eventually the FA runs out of steam and they swing into their avoidant side, and then you have two avoidant people.
Right. And that's where I think people get, like, that's where the confusion sets in. Yeah. And that's really what we're trying to resolve today is that, you know, just because that FA over time may create that avoidance, you know, or go into that avoidance
but it comes
side.
From fear.
Yes. It comes from a different place. It comes from a different wound than the DA.
Yes, absolutely. So if we switch and talk about the DA in childhood usually didn't have trauma. I do see some DAs with severe trauma, and it's usually the trauma was so severe and so young that they went into major suppression mode and they just have never come out of it. So they're DA. But the majority of DAs, they had parents that really showed up for them physically. So took them to the ball games, packed the lunches, you know, they were present. And maybe they were intellectually supportive, like they problem solved with their child, but they gave no emotional attunement.
Right.
So it was like, oh, yeah, you want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah.
Right. Or, you know, oh, stop being so upset.
Yeah. You're
right.
fine.
Or, don't worry about that. You're fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. And parents were very avoidant during conflict, so their parents never fought.
Yeah.
So it really reinforced this idea that conflict is conflict means something is really bad wrong if there's a conflict in a relationship because their parents often just went their separate ways, acted like it was fine, you know, when they came back together, right? And didn't actually show conflict resolution or model that conflict is normal in a relationship and definitely didn't model any resolution strategies. When parents give no emotional attunement, it leaves this child with their inability to recognize and process their own emotions, and it leaves them without the ability to understand and attune to or attend to other people's emotions.
Yeah.
So, and then the DA is very tricky because they show up really well in the beginning of relationships because their wounds around defectiveness, around being trapped, stuck, overcommitted, meeting people's expectations, losing their independence, those things are triggered with longevity in a relationship and with commitment and then with conflict. So they're triggered by the 3 C's, closeness, commitment, and conflict. And most of that stuff happens after the honeymoon stage. So that's why they show up so well in the honeymoon stage because they're not being triggered at all. And they can be vulnerable and effortful. But as soon as you start to say, okay, we're moving and we're getting closer and now we're having fights or, you know, you get into the power struggle stage of relationships, they start to really shut down. Their whole demeanor changes. Their entire MO changes. They withdraw. Emotionally, physically, sometimes they just become less communicative. They become less affectionate. They stop planning things with you. They stop giving you as much quality time. They just drift away.
I think that, again, this is why people are just, their minds are boggled because of this specific point.
It's a bait and switch. But it's not a purposeful one.
No. Again, doesn't mean that you have to accept it.
No.
In fact, it's why you say, like, people get so offended about this too. When you're like, if you're in the dating phase with the DA, run.
Go.
Run. And it's
they
not,
give you signs.
And it's not because you're trying to say, oh, DAs are terrible. No, it's saying, hey, unless they can recognize that they have these behaviors and like they're most likely not going to change, and then you're going to be stuck in a cycle with them, and 2 years is going to go by, and you're going to be wondering why they can't meet your needs.
And you're going to be begging for the bare minimum in that relationship. You're going to be begging. I have people that come to me and they've been neglected so long. They're like, well, I asked my husband for this thing yesterday. Like I asked him if I could have a hug, and they wouldn't even give him a hug. They were just like, I had a long day. I need a shower. Worked hard. Like, let me just, you know, like later. Right. And I'm like, you asked your spouse for a hug and they wouldn't give you a hug? Like, can you imagine?
No, I couldn't.
Like, that is not even, that's bare minimum, like basic need. And they get they're so far removed from a normal, healthy, secure relationship when they're with a dismissive avoidant that they don't even remember or understand what a secure relationship looks like.
Yeah.
Because they're so used to such profound neglect.
Yeah.
And so what happens with the dismissive avoidant is they have so many wounds around being trapped, being controlled, being smothered, and around having to meet other people's expectations because they were pushed into hyper independence. And then they get so uncomfortable with intimacy because if nobody ever taught you how to deal with your own emotions and you just shove them down, when someone brings you emotion, to you, it feels so overwhelming.
Right.
And then they get confused. They're like, why are you telling me these things? Like their blueprint is like, hey, if you want to have emotions, cool, but go over there and deal with them by yourself. And when you're done, come back and we'll have fun.
Right.
Right? To them, there's no concept of co-regulation. It's absolutely out the window, right? There's none of that. And then they just feel like, oh my gosh, my partner always has a problem. They're always criticizing me. They're always saying I'm not doing enough. They're always, and then that just makes them want to withdraw more. So then you just have someone that's constantly pulling back more and more and more and more. And so they're like a ghost in the relationship. I've had clients say, I genuinely wonder every day if my husband even likes me. If my husband has even thought about me today.
I had a client, and this is an interesting point to make, I think. I had a client who was extreme dismissive avoidant and had been married for 20 plus years. And his wife, whom I coached one time, who appeared pretty secure, said that she preferred for her husband to drink because when he drank, he was more attentive, more affectionate, and more attuned to her.
I see it all the time.
Yeah.
DAs drink to feel.
Yeah.
FAs drink to try to
not feel.
Because they feel too much all the time.
Right.
The DA is mostly engaging in emotional suppression. And here's the thing about emotional suppression. You don't get to choose what emotions you suppress.
Yeah.
When you suppress pain, you're suppressing your capacity for joy. A lot of DAs are like low-level depressed, and they have this like the tiniest emotional bandwidth, right? They're just, but the reason that like the very emotionally turbulent FA is so attracted to the DA in the dating phase is because of their like stability. They're steady. They don't get too upset about anything. They're so easy. They seem to be really go with the flow, and they feel really safe with the DA at first because they usually are coming from like a narcissistically abusive relationship or they're used to lots of emotional turmoil. So they find this guy who's so
like stoic
and like
mysterious.
Doesn't get mad about things, just kind of is like, oh, it's okay, and then they're like, oh. But then that guy remains stoic when he should be up in his game in terms of intimacy as the relationship progresses. He slows his intimacy game. He withdraws the intimacy because those wounds around, oh, now I'm trapped. Now I'm stuck. Now I have to meet someone else's expectations. Now I've lost my independence. All of those start really rising and really suppressing the feelings that they have for their partner.
Do you think DAs too, I know that you said that, intimacy can kind of go away, but do you think they also use intimacy as a way to connect or cover up or blanket like their suppression? Like it's the only way that they feel like, because I've had some clients dealing with DA partners who actually a question that I got was, can my partner be DA but still want to have, be intimate with me all the time?
Physically intimate. Yeah. Because that's the safest form of intimacy. Right? It's closeness without a lot of the talking and the emotion.
The emotional part.
Yeah. So a lot of DAs really crave physical intimacy.
And they'll keep their eyes closed the whole time. They'll be like this the whole time. Never opening their eyes.
Yeah, because that would be too intimate.
Right.
But then in some cases, DAs actually drop off in sexual intimacy over time. Oh, I said the S word. They let me say it.
It's just an S word.
So they feel like it's another expectation. And I definitely see this more in DA women. Which DA women confuse everybody.
They're
because we have
fascinating.
The gendered stereotype that women are intimate and vulnerable and they have all these feelings and they want to talk all the time. And so the DA woman gets with like an FA man who's like emotional and who wants intimacy.
Yeah.
And that here they have this woman that the society has said women want feelings, they want closeness, they want these, and they're trying to give that. And the DA woman's like pushing them away, and they're like, what is going on here? Because it's not meeting the feminine stereotype. And that's why I hate gender stereotypes in romantic relationships. Like if you ever have someone that's like, only speaking about women need this and men need this, drop them as a relationship
I'm so
coach.
glad you're clarifying this too, because I actually read a review on our podcast, and I think he or she gave us 3 stars because they felt like we weren't touching on relationships out of just a heterosexual relationship, But what we want to clarify is that attachment is not gender specific.
It's not. No.
So it doesn't matter.
Right. That's right. This could be 2 women, 2 men.
Yeah,
this could be
it's
throuple.
all relative.
I don't know.
Yeah. Right? It doesn't matter.
That's right. That's not my lens.
Yeah.
Because it's not a great predictive lens. And if you look at the science, gender does not predict romantic relationship behavior that much.
No.
It doesn't.
I don't know who left that review. And we appreciate your review.
Thank you.
We want to be clear on that.
But let's clarify.
But yeah, this isn't, we're not honing in on heterosexual relationships only, because it's just not gender specific.
Yeah.
And it would limit us too much.
It would definitely limit us too much. It would
be silly for us to do that.
Yeah. Now, is there such a thing as like masculine and feminine energy? Yes. And does that have some role? Yes. But attachment is a way bigger predictor of people's needs, of people's wounds, of people's behaviors inside of a relationship. It's just way better of a predictor. And how do I know that? Because we have scientific research and we've built models of prediction. So this is going into the science and the statistics. We actually can build statistical models and have an outcome variable like reactivity during conflict. Maybe that's our outcome that we're looking at. And we want to know what goes into predicting how reactive somebody will be during conflict. Guess what predicts that the most? Their attachment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, not their gender.
Not their gender. Their attachment.
Yeah.
Because I've seen women that can fly off the handle and I've seen men that can fly off the handle. And I see no relative difference in the amount of those people. But what brings them together is, oh, you're probably a fearful avoidant.
Yep. Yeah.
Because that attachment are the reactive ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I can usually say you're probably a fearful avoidant if you're reactive during conflict. And let me talk about your childhood.
Yeah.
Where was the trauma? I always find it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very predictable.
Extremely predictable, right? And so, it's why I use that lens. Because it's just, there's science there.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that because, I get a lot of messages too, people are like, well, and this is something that of course you do within your practice. So I understand that you have to probably gatekeep a little bit, but, talk about how you do the attachment theory assessment on specific clients and what that looks like.
Yeah. So I use the adult attachment interview, a version of it, I look at a lot of different areas of the person's life and their behavior in romantic relationships. And there are key things that I look for in those things, right?
Yeah.
There are key indicators of the different attachment styles, right? So, if we're talking about like conflict and reactivity, DAs really are not that reactive in conflict. They shut down way too soon to be reactive.
Yeah.
I mean, they might mount some intellectual defensiveness, but then quickly they're going to back down.
Yeah.
Right? The AP is going to cry and apologize.
Yeah.
Right? That's like a key indicator, as well as childhood experiences, the ability to be emotionally vulnerable. There are a lot of different nuances in attachment. But there are some quantitative attachment measures that should be given, by professionals. But I think, I really am looking to publish a paper on just some modifications of the adult attachment interview.
Yeah.
That I have used that I think are very predictive of attachment.
Yeah, because people ask, what's an online test I can take?
Oh my gosh, no. You can't rely on those online quizzes. And let me tell you why. So people don't realize that psychologists are some of the most rigorously trained scientists that exist because we have to measure things that we can't
hold
see.
in your hand.
Yeah.
Right, it's not tangible.
People's thoughts, people's emotions, and so we are trained in a science called psychometrics. And actually, before I did relationship coaching, I was a professor of psychology for a number of years. I was a director of a psychology program at a university for a number of years. And I was in charge of teaching research methods, statistics, and psychometrics. And psychometrics is the science of building assessments. So we're assessing a psychological construct like attachment or depression or anxiety or gratitude or optimism or whatever it is. Those are all psychological constructs. We have to come up with questions on a questionnaire that measure those things both reliably and validly. So reliability is the idea that the assessment, if what you're measuring didn't change, like if I were giving you an IQ test that I created, it should show today, if you took it, the same IQ as if you took it tomorrow, right? And took it the next day. Your IQ shouldn't change day to day. That's an indicator that my assessment is reliable, right? It's going to produce the same results over time, given that what we're measuring isn't actually changing. Validity is the idea that you're measuring what you're supposed to measure, right? So maybe I think I'm measuring IQ, but really I'm just measuring some other psychological construct, right? So we have lots of different testing. So there's this really long scientific process that assessments have to go through. Okay, so when people make these online quizzes, they mean absolutely nothing. They are completely invalid. They give you no real information. It's pseudoscience at its best, and you need to stay away from those things.
Stay away.
Stay away from online quizzes about your attachment or about anything.
Just join Dr. Hensley's group instead.
Stay away. So psychometrics, so what do? So we create questions. We give them out to populations and we pilot test it. We get initial data. We look at how well do some of these items correlate with one another. We can run certain validity assessments on them. There's different types of validity, and we have to measure all these different types of validity. We give it to more people, and we come back and we revise, and we give it to more people and we come back and revise. But we're using math. We're using statistics to analyze how well these items are correlating with each other, how well they're correlating with items that are not supposed to be measuring the same thing. We ask the same thing in different ways to test, to see if people are responding in similar ways. It is a very lengthy and scientific process. It takes years to create a reliable and valid psychological assessment of something.
It makes sense why it would.
Yeah. And so because we want to be careful, and people think that psychology is just this armchair discipline where people just make stuff up.
Right.
And nothing can be further from the truth. And so when people come to me all the time and they go, well, I took this online quiz and it says I'm an anxious attachment, but I thought I was a dismissive avoidant. And I'm like, oh my God, of course. So, or oh my gosh, like, yes.
Yeah. And that's why we're trying to settle, we're trying to settle a lot here. Yeah.
Yes. So the reason that I use an interview is because I can capture nuances.
Right.
And I can probe. Right. So it's like, I had a great childhood. Okay. Well, so if you were upset about something, could you go talk to your parents about your emotions? Well, no. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't know. Why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
You tell me. Well, because we just didn't do that in my family. Oh.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys didn't talk about feelings, did you? No, we didn't. Maybe they would, I might say, what do I do? And they might say, well, maybe you should go do A, B, or C. But I wouldn't say, wow, I'm feeling so sad right now. Or I'm feeling so confused right now. Or I feel so rejected right now. It's really painful for me. Those children didn't voice that to their parents because their parents would have not any clue how to deal with that. They were taught at a young age, hey, if you're upset, don't bring it to me.
Yeah. Just deal with it.
Deal with it. Go. Yeah. What do you want me to do about it? Right. Calm down. Life's tough. Get over it.
And if you weren't raised that way and you didn't have parents who did that, then you don't know, right?
Yeah,
like you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know that should have been a normal part of your development.
Right. Yeah.
And it fascinates me.
Yeah, it fascinates me too.
That some people are like, just no exposure to it. So, because I had a dad that was overly emotional. So even though there were times where I might not have received as much emotional attunement as I needed, my mom really tried. My mom's a dismissive avoidant. My mom, she did try. She did try. But my dad, I saw so much emotional expression and so much volatile emotion that emotion was a big part of my household.
Yeah.
Same. Right?
Same.
But I can imagine, like, my ex-boyfriends, this is very severe DA, I saw how his family dynamic operated, and they were super close, but they didn't talk about anything problematic.
Anything serious.
Anything serious. It was all jokes. It was all having fun.
Yeah.
And if something serious came up, they just all isolated. They all went their separate ways.
Things got quiet. Things got weird.
And then they would just let time pass, and then things would come. Like, if there was a conflict or anybody had a problem, they didn't.
I could not think of a deeper hell. Like, just because of how I was raised, like, I lived in a very emotional household too. But, like, I wear my heart on my sleeve.
Yeah,
like, it's right there.
Yeah.
And so, like, I like to get stuff out. I like to get over it and then move on. I could not imagine if things just got, like, super weird and awkward and I was just like this all the time. Like, and I couldn't express myself because I had this partner. And I imagine this is what it's like for the FA who is stuck in that long-term marriage with their DA partner. And it's just like this feeling of like this heavy awkwardness. I'd rather scream my lungs out.
That relationship with a DA will become more and more and more surface level over time and less intimate over time. Oof. And it's just so painful.
Yeah.
It's just a painful feeling of being rejected by someone. And the DA, honestly, they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't see it. They feel like you're just too needy.
Yeah.
Like, why do you need so much attention? It's like, no, we just need the basic elements of intimacy here.
Yeah.
And that's just a foreign concept to a lot of DAs, unfortunately. And it's painful for them, too, because imagine feeling emotionally blunted all the time.
Yeah, it would be
Imagine
awful.
just feeling like you're in a state of just...
It would be my hell.
Numbness.
Yeah. Because I'm I'm a very animated person.
Yeah.
Like, I
We're both
talk with
feelers.
my hands. Like, I feel a lot. Like, my whole body.
My daughters make fun of me because I talk with my hands.
Yeah. So I couldn't imagine feeling stunted all the time.
No, and then incapable.
Yeah.
Not knowing what to do.
It'd be awful.
Just feeling like the only way I can help the situation is to leave the situation.
Yeah.
And that's why DAs, they just withdraw and they freeze and they don't know what to say. And so what I need to clear up is if you have a DA partner, you have to know when they pull away, it's not because they don't care.
Yeah.
It's because their nervous system is being so activated. Their wounds are being so activated that they shut down and they freeze up.
Yeah.
And they lose their capacity to connect. And so for DAs, and FAs too, for FA's emotional reactivity and the DA's withdrawal, it's a capacity issue.
Yep.
They cannot regulate their trauma responses when they are triggered. And that's what I teach people to do.
Yeah.
That's how you get into secure attachment.
Yeah.
You have to dismantle the trigger cycle at every level, and you have to learn to be an emotionally and cognitively regulated human.
Yeah. I do want to clear up one more thing before we wrap up, which is because people get this confused as well. And I know the science changed, and I want you to explain it.
Okay.
Disorganized attachment. Because people get that confused with DA, but disorganized attachment was the original title given to the fearful avoidant, correct? So please, for the love of all things wonderful out there, clear that up for everybody.
So that term disorganized attachment was really created in looking at infants and children and how they responded to their caregivers. And that they noticed that those individuals would respond in a disorganized manner. So sometimes they might try to really connect and seek attachment, and other times they would withdraw or push their caregiver away. And so that's a disorganized pattern of relating to someone, right? So the anxious, preoccupied person, they have a very predictable pattern. I'm always trying to activate and come closer to my partner. The dismissive avoidant has a very organized pattern of relating. I'm always pulling back from my partner. But the fearful avoidant is disorganized in their relating. They come close and then they pull away, and then they come close and then they pull away. And they alternate these strategies in no apparent real pattern that can be predicted. It's just based on what's going on in the relationship and how they're feeling and what was triggered. And so as we refined the literature a little bit more and started looking at how attachment affects adult romantic relationships, we really saw clearly that there were two types of avoidant people. And in terms of the adult romantic attachment literature, and even like the book Attached kind of does this, and so many bad attachment coaches out there do this. They just categorize people as anxious or avoidant.
Yep.
And it does not capture the complexity of the fearful avoidant. So really newer research, and by newer, I mean like in the last 20, 30 years. That's, that's actually newer because attachment theory has been around since like the 1950s.
Right.
So really divided the avoidant up into the fearful. Fearful avoidants avoid because they are afraid of betrayal. Right?
That's the reason fearful avoidant. Yeah.
Dismissive avoidants avoid because they're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They're dismissing you. They want to get away from you because you're overwhelming them.
Right.
Fearful avoidants really want to connect, but they're scared of being hurt, so they don't always connect. Sometimes they withdraw to protect themselves. The dismissive avoidant is not avoiding because they're truly like afraid of being hurt. They're avoiding because they're overwhelmed, and if they're afraid of anything, it's losing their own independence.
Right.
Right. It's not being afraid of you hurting them. It's like, you're too much for me.
Right.
You need too much for me. You want too much for me. I don't want to have to give like that. So kind of give me some breathing room. You're smothering me.
See, so this is so helpful because I know that people really get the disorganized attachment. Just know that that's not even a term that they really use anymore.
Not much.
When it comes to attachment theory.
Some therapists do use it, and it's well-meaning.
Yeah.
Because it was a term that was used for a long time.
Yeah.
But if we're really getting clear on adult romantic behavior, we really should be using the terms. Which is your specialty. Yep. Fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant.
Yeah. So I hope this clears it up for everyone.
I hope so.
Yes, this is a great one to tune into. I do too.
Because a lot of people come to me and they think they're DA and they're really FA, or they think they're FA and they're really DA.
Yes. So for all those out there that have been messaging, asking, hey, where's a quiz? Where can I figure it? You just need to listen to this episode, and maybe it'll give you some insight into which attachment style you identify with the most.
In my course, just my online course, on my website, Achieving Attachment Security, will really take a deep dive.
Absolutely.
And it will help you determine your attachment style. It'll help you determine your partner's attachment style. And then I'm going to give you all the tools that you need.
Yeah, to earn your attachment security.
Yes.
Because, one thing that we don't want everyone to really fixate on is, and this was something that I really honed in on when I was coaching, is that it's more important to focus on earning your attachment security versus what attachment style you have, right? So the focus should be, how do I get better? And so, and that's exactly what Dr. Hensley does, in her course and in her hybrid group coaching program.
Which is the course plus meetings with me.
Yes.
So another
it's a step further.
Another thing we're seeing is that a lot of people are buying the course, which is great.
Yeah.
But if you have lots and lots of questions, like the group experience is there for you to troubleshoot what you're learning in the course.
Right.
Right. So if it's like, how do I apply this to my specific relationship? That's when you need to purchase the group portion of it, because you can buy it without the group. You can buy it alone.
Yeah.
But the group really gives you that benefit, and you can remain anonymous in the group.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to be in a group.
And they're small groups. They're intimate
small.
groups.
They're like
so
5,
that,
6, 7
people,
people.
You get that individualized attention.
Yeah.
And if you've bought the course and you want to come back and take the group,
we can help you there.
Just reach out, contact us on the website, because we can give you a code to just purchase the group calls.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people I don't feel like a lot of people recognize, like, okay, well, here's the course, and it's great because it's this pace that you get to go at, like, to self-learn. But if you have a lot of questions, that's what the group calls are for.
That's right.
And you got to add those on.
Yep. It's the ultimate learning experience.
That's
the hybrid
right.
group is the ultimate, and it's so good for DAs.
Oh, and it's so good.
It is so perfect for DAs. They do 1,000 times better in the group than they do one-on-one.
Yeah, or just self-learning.
Better. Yeah.
And listen, I know I say it all the time, and I'm going to say it again, and I'm just going to keep on saying it. I've sat in on Dr. Hensley's group coaching program multiple times, just, when I was coaching and trying to learn. And I learned something new every single time. And it's just the knowledge that she can provide and the light bulbs that start to go off. You're just like, it just starts to make sense. It really does. And you're just worth every single penny.
Thank you.
So If you want to check that out, go to thedatingdecoder.com, look at all her services. And please, again, if you're enjoying what we're offering here, continue to listen, continue to tune in, continue to watch, like, subscribe, leave a review. We prefer 5 stars, obviously, but we are open to feedback. And we're, our goal, hopefully, in the future is, to have you guys write in. Tell us what you want to hear about.
We want to have guests.
Yeah, we want to have guests. We want Dr. Hensley to actually coach someone live
on
one of the podcasts. So
if you would like to do that,
we're gonna have. There's gonna be lots to come once we, we're just getting our feet wet. So
and we've never done a podcast. We have no idea what we're doing.
We're just kind of like let's do a podcast, and then it's just here we are. So we just appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. We love you all, and until next time, peace, love, and perspective.